What is going on, Dolphins fans? Welcome to the Fins Up Network. It's Ben Morgan, and we're talking offensive line on today's Miami Dolphins offseason positional preview video. I said in the last video that it was going to be a quicker one. It was interior defensive line. I feel confident in that unit. I feel like we're fairly set with that unit. Today, the game changes. Regarding the offensive line, we've got some spots to talk about, and mainly those that aren't occupied by what? Terron Armstead, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt. You know the drill. And I talked in previous videos already that I've been doing for these ones, prioritizing certain positions this offseason. We're talking cornerbacks, tight ends, backup quarterbacks, running backs. Quite honestly, offensive line takes the cake for me. That is number one. I think cornerback is right up there with it, but offensive line takes the cake for me because regardless of what our front office and coaching staff is saying about left guard and right tackle, and we're going to get into that obviously in this video, I personally feel it's straight negligence to not properly address those positions. But before I get started, I want to hear from you. Which free agent, which NFL draft offensive lineman do you have your eye on? And honestly, with the amount of depth that every single team's offensive line unit needs, we need a lot of guys. If you've got one of each, if you've got a couple of each, go ahead and drop those in the comments. Curious to see who you have your eyes on. But let's take a peek at the guys that we rolled with in 2022, because the first thing that you're going to notice is, damn, this is a long list. Well, that is because of a couple of reasons. One, obviously, it's different than quarterback. You're not starting one each week. We're starting 5 guys every week. But then the other obvious reason in my mind is so many damn injuries. The amount of guys we had to add this during the 2022 season, the amount of guys we had to bring in from the practice squad, the amount of just natural backups that we had to play. Man, we were sort of cursed in the secondary. We were cursed on the offensive line as well, especially when you're talking about injuries to Terron Armstead. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well, because the second thing that you notice is those 3 solidified players. It's Terron Armstead, it's Robert Hunt, and it's Connor Williams. Because if you look at Terron Armstead, like I said, 13 games started, but we all know it by now. There's a chance that he could have played in 1 game this last season. There were doctors out there that recommended he having season-ending toe surgery after that week 1 game against the New England Patriots. And obviously, dude was a warrior, played through everything. Well, I shouldn't say everything, but man, he was fighting injury after injury, 4 lower body injuries throughout the season, and he still started 13 games, was still plug and play, was still one of the team's best offensive linemen. Love that we have him. We just got to continue to find some depth, which we'll talk about. Obviously, with Robert Hunt, started all 17 games. Dude was one of Pro Football Focus's best right guards. And you could say that when he had to shift over late in the season, the right tackle for us, he's arguably our team's best right tackle. And I don't even want to say arguably, he is. And that's good and bad because position versatility is always nice. But when you have a guy that is the best at 2 of the positions, that means you're probably a little bit weak behind that guy in regards to those positions. So that's nice that he's that good, but obviously you can plug and play him at starting right guard or right tackle. And then speaking of position versatility, the other guy, Connor Williams, played left guard all of his NFL career with the Cowboys. He comes to Miami, you plug him in at center, and it's like, what are we doing? Why don't we just leave one of these top 10 best left guards in the NFL at left guard? Well, Miami experimented. They put him at center, and he started every single game there, and he was also one of Pro Football Focus's best centers for the season. I got to do one thing here to refresh my list so that it doesn't disappear on you, because I'm not done talking about these guys yet. I told you this video might be a little bit longer compared to interior defensive linemen, because the third thing that you're going to notice when you're looking at this is those expiring contracts, especially for those tackles behind our projected starters. If you're projecting Terron Armstead at left tackle, if you're projecting Austin Jackson at starting right tackle, you got Brandon Shell, who obviously started 11 games, but he played a ton of meaningful snaps for him. He's set to hit free agency. Greg Little had to start 7 games. He played meaningful snaps. Not that he was a world beater or anything, but he's expiring. Eric Fisher was brought in. Obviously, he was brought in as an insurance policy, and the policy was a flop. Never even played a snap for us, ended up on IR, but he was only on a 1-year deal. Kendall Lamb had to start late in the season. He's expiring. Jaron Christian was brought in towards the end of the season. He's expiring. And then another positional versatility guy. You can play center or guard. Michael Dieter obviously didn't do much for us this year, but his contract is expiring as well. So if we're looking at this offseason, not only do I prefer guys that can already be placed, like I want guys that can be placed at starting left guard and placed at starting right tackle, or at least have a realistic shot of competing with the guys that we have there and earning a starting spot throughout the offseason. But we're likely going to need to add depth across the offensive line because of all of our guys that are set to hit free agency. And you know as good as I do, when your depth is tested at offensive line, it shows. It showed in 22, and we've got to do something about that, obviously, here this offseason. So if we're looking at some of the free agent options, let's pop over to that screen. As I've been doing, these are sorted by number of snaps that have been played by these guys in the 2022 NFL season. And free agency for me is the spot to start with this position because I love the idea of potentially adding a draft pick too, which we'll get to. But man, I want to get someone that's been proven. What did we do last offseason? We inserted a top 5 left tackle from free agency, and then we took a really good guard and moved him to center. But we acquired 2 guys that were plug and play and game changers on the offensive line. Now, I don't know if we can financially get 2, but man, can we at least get 1? Or can we maybe get 2 that can at least compete for these positions? And if you're looking at this list here, there are some guys that I anticipate we end up hearing quite a bit about here this offseason, because I don't think I'm the only one in this boat of wanting to really bulk up this offensive line here this offseason. But Mike McGlinchey, you're obviously going to get connections with there just because of the Mike McDaniel thing, him being with the 49ers. But he's got tons of experience playing right tackle. He's only 28 years old. Garrett Bradbury, if you wanted to experiment with the idea, because you know Connor Williams can start at left guard or center. If you wanted to move him back to left guard, which I don't know if the team wants to or not, we'll figure that out as time goes on. But if you wanted to get more of a natural center and then move Connor Williams back to left guard, Garrett Bradbury could get that done. He's only 27. Another guy that's got tons of right tackle experience, Caleb McGarry. Another guy that's got a ton of right tackle experience, Jawan Taylor. He's only 25. He actually entered the league at a super young age, but he's been starting at right tackle essentially since he's walked into the NFL as well. And one other guy that I've got my eye on as well, moving into the interior, Dalton Risner from the Broncos. And a couple of reasons, because I actually thought the Dolphins might kick the tire on a trade before the deadline for a guy like Dalton Risner. Obviously, they didn't with him scheduled to hit free agency, though. They might have a second run at him here. And who knows, with a new offensive line coach coming from Denver, maybe he's got some history with him. Maybe he's got something that he can see there. I wouldn't anticipate glancing over Dalton Risner's name as well. So just a couple of guys to keep your eye on. Well, let's pull up the NFL draft guys here. You'll see that I sorted them out by tackles and then more of the interior guys. And like I said, free agency is my priority when it comes to this position and trying to find a plug and play starter for 2023. But I love the idea of drafting an offensive lineman and then maybe not just having to throw him into the fire, kind of like what we've had to do recently. And you know that our track record with drafting offensive linemen isn't great. Robert Hunt is probably the outlier in that situation. But if we can get a guy, let him develop with the new offensive line coach, let him get some experience with Terron, Armstead, Connor Williams, Robert Hunt. He's got some good guys to learn from. So I still like the idea of potentially drafting some linemen as well. And some guys that I've got my eye on, guys that I plan on maybe, hopefully, getting to do player profiles on this offseason. I'll start with some tackles. I like Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, Blake Freeland out of BYU, Wanya Morris out of Oklahoma. Those are guys that I already have my eye on that I'm hoping to get some more film on and do player profiles on. But then if you look over at centers and guards, Cody Monk from North Dakota State, if that name rings a bell, if you paid attention to the Senior Bowl, he's the guy that looks like he's spent about 6 too many months alone by himself in the woods and wasn't able to take care of himself, and now he's missing teeth and he didn't get a haircut. The dude looks like a menace, and he had some nice moments during the Senior Bowl as well. Hopefully I can get a player profile on him as well because he's an interesting prospect. And then one other guy that actually had a really damn good Senior Bowl, John Michael Schmitz out of Minnesota. I'm definitely going to get to a player profile on him because he's played some guard. He's projecting a center as well here as we head into the NFL draft. But definitely a couple of guys there to keep an eye on and guys that we're going to continue to talk about as we navigate our way here through the offseason. But like I said, offensive line, it's my top concern. It's my top priority heading into the offseason. And like I said, the coaches, the front office, continuing to show that trust, that faith in Austin Jackson, in Liam Eichenberg. Honestly, you could say that that's probably because of the draft capital. Austin Jackson, former first round pick. Liam Eichenberg, former second round pick. Both of them are still young. Both of them are guys I'd love to continue to invest in. Let them compete for spots, though. Because are you going to feel hell bent on saying that's this guy's spot if they weren't first and second round guys? What if they were fifth and sixth round guys? Do you think they'd be getting this kind of treatment? I honestly don't think so. And at the end of the day, we know how important the offensive line is. Look at the Eagles' offensive line. They were all five of those guys were like what, top 7 at their position according to Pro Football Focus. They were unbelievable this year in pass protection, in run blocking. It goes a long way. And we need it with the history that we've had with Tua and the injuries. We need to keep him upright, and it starts up front. Yes, Tua needs to make better decisions with the ball. We know he's going to be doing some off-season training on falling properly and all that good stuff. But keeping him upright, first and foremost, has to be the priority this offseason for me and the Dolphins. But like I said, that is my time for today. Our next positional preview is going to focus on another position that I think is of a huge need, and that's the position of a linebacker. So we'll be getting to that one here soon. Like I said, though, if you've got a free agent, if you've got an NFL draft prospect on the offensive line that you want to talk more about, that you think I should do a player profile on, that you think the Dolphins should target, drop them in the comments. Curious to see who you've got on your radar. I've got for today, Miami Dolphins fans. Until next time, fins up.